Hi everyone, this is Dakota Lilly with Students and Youth for a New America. This is the first part of a new series I am going to try to start where I analyze and provide my perspective on different articles, headlines, commentary on Venezuela, and hopefully to counter some of the lies involved with Venezuela. So I have in front of me some articles that I wanted to analyze and give my reaction to, and hopefully a different perspective that I think is very, very much needed. Okay, so the first one, the headline is Canada Sanctions Venezuela's Maduro. And it says in the article basically that Canada announced new sanctions against Maduro and 19 other leaders of the Bolivarian Revolution on Friday, November 3rd. Included in this list of people was the Vice President, Tarek El-Aissami, the Oil Minister, etc. The Foreign Minister of Canada accused Maduro of being, quote, responsible for or complicit in gross violations of internationally recognized human rights, have committed acts of significant corruption, or both. My first reaction is, where is the Foreign Ministry of Canada when they're selling billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, a known human rights abuser? I think, that's number one issue. Where are they condemning the United States for the actions that they do that put human rights in danger all across the world? And where are they when it comes to leaders of the opposition, Julio Borges, Enrique Capriles, Freddy Guevara, these different leaders that have called for violence, that have called for actions that have led to the deaths of hundreds of Venezuelans. Leopoldo Lopez's wife was caught with, billions of bolivars in her car. Is that not an act of corruption? Where did that money come from? Where was it going? So it's all, again, this imperial mindset where they turn a blind eye to the corruption of the capitalists and the oligarchs, yet at the same time condemning corruption on the side of those fighting for the people. And the recently Venezuela got a new attorney general appointed by the National Constituent Assembly, and this new attorney general has led a fight against corruption not really seen before in Venezuelan history and unparalleled in Latin America. The last attorney general, Luisa Ortega, was complicit in so many different acts of corruption that they uncovered once she fled the country to Colombia, funnily enough. And, they've really spearheaded this new campaign against corruption, again, unseen in Venezuelan history, and has targeted not only people in the opposition, but also, some Chavistas that have been guilty of corruption. So this is part of the quote-unquote revolution within the inside of the revolution that Chavez talked about before he died. The Foreign Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, goes on to say, Canada is determined to protect human rights and combat corruption worldwide. That's funny, considering the Paradise Papers, which were just leaked, showed that one of Trudeau's closest informants and campaign contributors was found to have harbored millions of dollars in offshore accounts. That's corruption. That's something that they should be investigating. And this is Trudeau, this poster child of liberalism, one of the new leaders of the free world, so they say, along with Merkel and Macron, two other puppets of the ruling class. If Canada's so determined to protect human rights, they'd stop selling billions of dollars worth of weapons. They'd stop, cooperating with the United States in their military interventions abroad. They'd stop being a lapdog of U.S. imperialism. And they certainly wouldn't host the Lima Group, which is a group composed of other lapdogs of U.S. imperialism, from Colombia to Peru, etc., which called to further isolate, quote, Venezuela, which is one of the problems that is facing Venezuela today, which has led to this economic downturn, is further isolation. The foreign minister goes on, to say, they're going to step up their pressure on the Maduro administration, and Canada recently, as I said, joined this 12-nation bloc, the Lima Group, which pushed for more economic sanctions, which brings me to my second article. The second article has to do with Venezuela is in talks to restructure its debt held by PDVSA, the state oil company. Let me start by saying Venezuela has always met its debt obligations, tens of billions of dollars. They've always met their debt obligations, yet for some reason, their credit rating continues to go down. Personally, and empirically, evidently, it seems as though this credit rating system is just another way for the financial establishment to push more imperial gains. Venezuela has never been late, has never missed a payment, yet they have a bad credit rating, which makes the interest rates for credit go up drastically, making it harder for Venezuela to borrow, which every country does and every country needs to do in order to continue its economic obligations. But for some reason, Venezuela is singled out, even though they've never missed a payment, they've never been late. And the credit rating has never shown any correct correlation between international reserves, the price of oil, the GDP, anything. This credit rating is just, completely at the hands of the market, which is completely inefficient and just completely drastic. So there's no rationale behind the credit rating for Venezuela. It's just a way for them to starve the United States, starve Venezuela from much needed credit. So the article goes on to say that Maduro said, quote, "We're going to begin a complete reformatting to find an equilibrium and to cover the necessities of the country, the investments of the country." And debt restructuring is something countries almost do when they have debt. Argentina did it. Most countries do it. It's just part of the plan. It's very rarely do bondholders get 100% of the loan. It's called a haircut in economics. It's always done. I haven't heard of a case where it has not been done. He announced that there's a presidential commission led by the vice president that will begin refinancing and restructuring all of their external debt. The announcement came as Maduro confirmed PDVSA, the state oil company, would make $1.1 billion on bond payments, ending weeks of speculation that the government would fall short. Again, who speculated this? This is the same financial elite that is pushing this agenda against Venezuela, as I said, to starve them of credit, to starve them of dollars, which they desperately need. They go on to note how some bondholders are saying they're optimistic, some saying they're pessimistic, again, with no shred of evidence. But again, this goes back to the sanctions that Canada and the United States have placed on it, making it much more difficult for Venezuela to restructure its debt and meet its obligations internationally. So, this economic downturn that they use to justify these sanctions is partly caused by these sanctions, which makes it harder for them to get credit, which makes it harder for them to meet their obligations, which makes interest rates for their credit go up. And that hurts the Venezuelan people. So again, another form of unconventional warfare, an economic war, which is being waged against Venezuela. Which goes to my next article. Maduro has recently announced that the minimum wage will be increased by 30%. This is, Maduro said that it was part of a, quote, arduous battle against an economic war being waged by, certain international actors. And I wanted to point this out to show that during this economic downturn, Maduro and the Bolivarian revolutionary government are instituting wage increases during this time of economic downturn. And I wanted to contrast this with the case seen in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece, in Ireland, and across, other Western countries. for this, when these countries face economic downturn, their leaders kowtow to imperialism, the IMF, the World Bank, and they cut wages, they cut public services, they raise taxes on the poor and the working class. They squeeze the working class in every aspect. And I wanted to contrast that with what this revolutionary government is doing, fighting this economic war, where they boost the minimum wage in order to protect those that are normally hardest hit. I think that really shows the difference, one of the many differences between the two styles of governance. One is for the people and by the people and for the protection of the people against those that are trying to do harm economically, and the other is kowtowing to imperialism, to financial terrorism, and allowing unemployment to soar to 25% in some countries, poverty to increase, rates for electricity and water to increase, all while wages escalate. So again, the difference between the two, I think it's very obvious, and I think the American people and people across the world can choose which one they'd prefer, a government that looks out for their interests or a government that looks out for the interests of big capital, financial institutions, and other powerful establishment bodies. So those are 3 articles I wanted to go over. I want to make this, I hope you enjoyed it, one, and I want more feedback. I want people to tell me what I can do differently, what articles they want me to analyze, etc. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on Venezuela analysis, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, a bunch of different places and get more headlines. And obviously these videos are going to be a little bit longer, which I think is useful. I'm going to make both long and short ones. So tell me what you think. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any criticism, let me know. And I'm thinking about making this, maybe every 2 days, every 3 days or so, maybe even every day, because there's a lot of propaganda out there to counteract. So again, let me know what you think. And this is Dakota Lilly of Students, Youth, in New America. Thank you for listening.